Hello, guys. Welcome to another exciting episode of the Let's Talk Education Africa podcast. For me especially, I keep on bumping or seeking personalities, organizations who are doing really interesting stuff, especially leveraging on tech or using tech to sort of push for an overall improvement in education across Africa. And I'm excited to have Nyagaki Gichia of Team4Tech Africa. She's the Regional Hub Coordinator, Sub-Saharan Africa. We're going to have an interesting conversation, get to know about Team4Tech. We're going to know a bit about Nyagaki and what she does for Team4Tech. And I hope we really have an exciting and interesting conversation. So let's dig right in. Nyagaki, welcome.
Thanks, Kwame. Thanks for having me on the show, and thanks everyone for listening.
Awesome. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Who is Nyagaki?
So my name is Nyagaki. I am based in Kenya, born in Kenya, raised in Kenya. My background, so I came into this education space from a tech background. So I studied engineering. I was the typical techie, but early on, I realized that there were gaps in education, or there were issues in my own education. I really wanted an education that was more hands-on, and I didn't feel like I quite got that even through my engineering degree. And so, I started working with kids. A group of us came together, started working with kids and teaching robotics and teaching, coding to kids in the slum areas here in Nairobi. And I think that's where I started I could actually get into education, but with the tech angle. And then, fast forward years later, now I'm working at Team4Tech. I work with amazing organizations who are working in education, and I'm helping them or supporting them build their capacity and better their programs through incorporating tech.
I checked your profile really, and you touched a bit on some of the things that sort of pushed you into education. So I saw you worked at an international school of Kenya, you taught high school robotics, you ran a makerspace and led student clubs and initiatives related to creative product design, plastic recycling. And I saw you even do a bit of stuff on STEM programs as well. And yes, for me in particular, and I'm sure my listeners are our listeners are curious as well. What would you say, share with us, right, a context in your childhood that you believe has influenced, the path that you are on now, specifically in the education tech space?
So I wouldn't quite say from my childhood. As I said, I was the typical techie, the kind of, kid that would be taking apart stuff and halfway burning down my mother's house to her shock and disbelief. But that's how I learned. That's how I thought, even going into engineering, that's what I thought I would be doing most of my time. But then I go into uni, and most of my classes are in a classroom, in a lecture hall, and all of it is theory. And at the end of the day, you are learning to pass an exam. So I think that's where something clicked, where honestly, I think I got bored. This is what I wanted to do, but at least this is what I thought I wanted to do, but then it wasn't working. And I was, I would enjoy making stuff, but I wasn't getting that through my education. And my degree was 5 years. So imagine 5 years of sitting in a classroom thinking that, preferring to be in a workshop or something like that. So, and it wasn't just myself. We were a few of us who felt the same way, and we kind of just found each other and joined something called a Fab Lab at our university. And through this Fab Lab, we would, have access to tools, materials, machines that basically it's like you could play all day and learn. So the things that you're learning in the classroom, you could actually, learn them, but in a workshop setting. And I think I spent a majority of my university time there as opposed to in the classroom. So, I would even ditch class sometimes to go and spend time in the Fab Lab because I felt like I was getting more in that space, in that more, collaborative, very free, very, here are the tools, figure out how to work with them, kind of environment. So I think that for me was, if and I went to like really good schools, so if I was not getting this kind of education, so the question was, what about the kids who had only the basics or didn't even have the basics? The kids are living in the slum areas or living in rural areas. What kind of education were they getting? So I think that's where this all stemmed from. And as I said, a few of my friends and I started running classes, and I just saw the power of just being more intentional about how kids are being educated. And seeing these kids thrive and flourish in such a short time. It was great.
Quickly, this seems to be a running theme, right? I've spoken to a few people on this podcast. I have friends, and myself included. Our stories are very similar in the sense that we were excited about, in my case, particular courses. We got into them, and it seemed there was a structure. There was a hard structure as to the way education was supposed to be delivered, right? And I mean, just like you, I was very bored in class, like a lot,
Yeah.
What do you think the problem is? Why are we not paying attention to the way education is delivered?
I think, well, and I'll talk from a Kenyan perspective, and even just dating it back to when I was in school. The whole point of education was to pass exams and get a job, right? So you went to school for X number of years, you would pass this test and get a piece of paper, and then you take that piece of paper to an employer and say, hey, I made it, now hire me. So the problem with that is, I think it worked for years, like maybe back in the 90s, it worked. And if you talk to our parents, they say the same thing. They just had to go through school, and then they would, be integrated into the job market. But then what happened was that stopped working. The job market started requiring more. It wasn't just about the piece of paper. It was about, do you have the soft skills? Can you think on your feet? Can you solve problems? But our education system was not designed to teach these skills. And so what was happening is you'd have university graduates with their degrees not getting jobs, not getting opportunities. And more people were getting these degrees and not getting anything out of it. And I think we were a bit slower to realize that something must change. Right now, Kenya has a new curriculum, a competency-based curriculum that was launched, 7 years ago now? And yes, that has its issues, but I think we're now realizing that there's more to education than just a paper, than just a grade. Education is bringing up the whole human, and the whole human cannot just be confined in a classroom, right? So I think that was the biggest problem. Yeah.
Interesting. I mean, I like you use certain words like a piece of paper that actually captures exactly what it is. And I mean, I agree with you when you say it looks as if there's a certain disconnect to where the sort of education you're getting is very, it's not relevant, if you like, to what industry is expecting, right? I absolutely agree with that. So now let's go into the tech bit. What's your general take on the disruptions and innovations that are happening in the education space?
So a lot has happened, especially after COVID. I'll touch on the COVID bit and say, COVID forced all of us to, before EdTech was like a thing on the side. When you talked about technology in education, it was either reserved for the people who could afford it, or it was like a distraction or something that was not quite necessary. And then COVID struck. Then what happened? The organizations or the schools, the teachers who had some tech knowledge or who had some affinity to technology quickly adapted. And the ones who did not have any knowledge in tech or had no systems in place were out of school. You'd have students out of school for a year. I think in Uganda, kids were out of school for about even 2 years.
Oh, wow.
Because they were just not ready. So people started looking at EdTech like, oh my gosh, this is a must-have in the classroom or in our systems, right? Now, how that looks, how EdTech is implemented in schools and institutions is different depending on the type of institution, the age of the learners, the I guess capacity or infrastructure that is in these institutions. But it has become a necessity. And now, of course, you saw the rise of disruptions like EdTech platforms and virtual classrooms and online learning resources, blended learning models, like all these things came into place. And I think we've just spun out from there. Now I think we have AI tutors that are being, have been launched and are being piloted in different places, because at the end of the day, kids need to learn, right? Education still needs to continue, and technology enables or allows for that education to continue without when other things may come, if it's a pandemic such as COVID, or maybe lack of training of teachers. Technology kind of makes up for that. However, it's just a tool. It's not whether when you have a in Swahili you say a shamba, like a plot of land to dig up. It's you to decide what kind of tool you're going to use, whether you're going to use a hoe or an axe or whatever it is. It's you to choose what tool you use. And technology is just a tool that is used in education to for various reasons. If you're using it for children to explore and broaden their horizons, or just learn new skills, that's one thing. But in other areas, it's like, this is what is needed, such that kids can have an education when a teacher is not available, or is not there to teach kids during that 8-hour learning period.
I mean, I'm hearing you, and as somebody who has been paying close attention to the developments that have been happening, especially post-COVID, I for one, on one hand, is very excited about especially the local solutions that are coming up. So there's this gradual move away from the use of these foreign tools that have been made available or were prominent during the COVID period. A colleague of mine and an entrepreneur actually in the space who has come up with a really exciting product told me that, interestingly, maybe I can speak for Ghana, but I'm sure maybe you might be able to make some connections in there. He says the education space is a dinosaur, and it's a very it's deeply ingrained to, if you like, a square box. And despite the exciting news about all of these developments that are popping up and leveraging on tech to change the way education is delivered, etc. It's been post-COVID for about two years, I believe. 2 years, yes,
Yeah.
correct. And he's saying that a lot of schools are going back to the old ways of doing things. And so despite the speed with which we are hearing about the so many EdTech products or the innovations that are popping up, there's still that slow adoption of tech. What's your take on that?
Oh, that's an amazing question, and I like that question because the people who are building these. Okay, fine. So you talked about innovations or disruptions that came from mostly the West, and we've seen that a lot of these have been localized, and now we have local entrepreneurs who have built out platforms or services or tech services for education. The problem is, who are they building for? Who is the user? I'm a big proponent of human-centered design and putting your users at the center of this. So me as a techie, let's say I go and build out this amazing platform and say this is going to be used by students out in, I don't know, Rwanda, for example. But have you gotten the teacher buy-in? Have you actually found out what the teacher's needs are? Because the teacher is the one who is the one who's going to interact with this platform first in a classroom setting. They're the ones who will decide whether to open that computer or not. So you can build the best of platforms, the best of services, but if you don't have the teacher buy-in, if you're not solving a problem that the teacher has, it's not going to be used in the classroom. And I've spoken to teachers who said they've been bombarded by so many different new things. Hey, try this semester or this term, try this other platform this term. This is supposed to help you in math. That they get so confused that, is this actually helping my students? Or is this just a platform or something that the school has been asked to use for free, and maybe they'll get free computers? What is the end goal for all this innovations, and who are we designing for? I think that's the question that's not being answered. And if you talk to teachers are overworked. Teachers have long days, and for them to learn how to use a new platform and then teach kids how to use it, they're not going to do that if it's not helping them in one way or form. Yeah.
So you're saying they are overwhelmed by the amount of innovation that's happening?
Yes, they are overwhelmed, and these innovations are not solving their problems. Everyone is looking towards, bettering student outcomes, but there's still the teacher who's in that classroom who is going to be a user of this technology and who is going to be delivering classes, lessons using this technology. So what problems are we solving for the teacher and not just adding more work to their plate?
That's an interesting take. We could have this discussion, in more detail later on. It's something I'm actually really passionate about, and I'm sure we'll find another forum to discuss that. But really, thank you for your insights in there. Let's get to why we are here today. Let's talk about your organization, Team4Tech. Who are they? What are they set out to achieve? Let's start with that.
Great. So Team4Tech is a nonprofit impact accelerator. The organization is bridging the digital equity gap in education. And the goal is to create inclusion and opportunities for under-resourced learners around the world. And of course, all this is in support of UN Sustainable Development Goal 4.4. So we work with nonprofits from all over the world. I work with the ones based in Africa. We currently have 21 nonprofits spread across 9 countries in Africa. And I work with them like on the ground, one-on-one. I'm visiting them. I basically become part of their organization. And we chart a 3 to 5 year roadmap of, where are they and where do they want to be in 5 years, and how can we get them there?
Interesting.
So
it's
that's
So it's strictly working with other NGOs.
Yes.
Okay. Interesting. Interesting. So I see you have a huge title. I mean, you touched on it a bit, which is the Regional Hub Coordinator for Sub-Saharan Africa.
Yes.
So you mentioned you have you're working with 21 nonprofits scattered across.
Africa.
Okay. So what are these NGOs doing? Give me a scope as to the different things that you're doing that you plug into to be able to bring it to fruition.
So our NGOs are different in like even the ages of learners that they're working with. We have nonprofit partners that are working with would say K-12, so that's primary and secondary school learners. We have others that are working on like workforce development. These are young adults, teaching them new skills for the job market. And we have others who are working on like platforms for literacy. So like WorldReader is one of our partners. They are global, but I specifically am working with the Kenya team, and we've worked with a team in Ghana as well. And we also have nonprofit partners that are working on teacher training. So it's very different depending on what their needs are. And I can drill down a bit into that. So with one of our partners here in Kenya, it's in rural Kenya, they wanted to build a makerspace in in their area. And this is really unheard of. It's not often that you hear of makerspaces built out in rural areas, but they wanted to build one for their community of
Could you expand on what a makerspace is?
A makerspace is a space where students, adults, anyone comes in to learn. It typically has machines, computers. It could have it varies. It could be very technical, so you'd have like 3D printers and laser cutters, or it could be kind of less technical, and you'd have things like sewing machines and a woodworking station. So a makerspace is basically just a space where people collaborate and work on projects and turn these projects into, sometimes they could turn these projects into products, or just making the ideas come to life.
So like an incubator lab, sort of.
So an incubator is usually focused on taking whatever you have to market.
Okay.
But a makerspace is more about the learning. So it's not, you don't necessarily have to create a product to sell or to solve. It's more about the learning.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Learn something new today. Okay. Okay. You want to add something?
Yes. So they were building out. They wanted to build out this makerspace. They have 63 partner schools in their sub location or sub locality, I guess, that they're working with. So they wanted these children to have access to this space. So we're supporting them. We also we have corporate partners and EdTech partners who we bring along on this journey with us to support us. So with them, for example, we partner them with Adobe, and we worked on a project to kind of map out how this makerspace would look like. And then we brought in another one of our partners, Raspberry Pi Foundation, who helped with the programming, what would be taught in this makerspace, how did we do teacher training, so that teachers have access to and the skills to train students. And that's, of course, talking about, you're looking at sustainability. So it's something that can the teachers learn these skills so that they can be the ones training the students. Let me stop then. You'll ask another question.
Interesting. I think I'm listening to you, and I have my fair share of dealing with people, organizations, and stuff like that. What are some of the identifiable issues you've come across, and how you're dealing with them, especially with these other NGOs scattered across the continent?
Yeah. So something unique about my position is, because I was working with all these nonprofits in different countries, I started seeing similarities really early on. One person would be asking for, hey, we have all this content, we need our content digitized, we would like a learning management system, and then you hear the exact same thing from another partner, in the another part of the continent. And what I quickly realized is many of these nonprofits, especially the ones that are working on the grassroots level, so not in the big cities, mostly in the rural areas, they don't have access to a community of practice or a community of knowledge, where they could get ideas, where they could bounce off, hey, I am trying this, how do you do this, how do you train teachers on digital literacy? So the biggest problem, one of the biggest problems, is many of them were just building from the ground up again. So they're reinventing the wheel, spending a lot of time doing the same thing over and over again. So as Team4Tech, what we did is we created this online community of practice where nonprofits can actually interact with each other, share ideas, and we've noticed that they're now collaborating with each other. Even their programs they're sharing, because these are nonprofits, so they're not competing like on a program level or for anything. They're saying, right, hey, I built this program, I think you may want to use it. Do you want to use this program for, let's say, adult learners or high schoolers? There's a lot of sharing that's happening. So that's one of the problems. The other biggest problem that we can't go without speaking about is a lack of infrastructure. And this is a big thing, where you have all these ideas, but then you just do not have the technical infrastructure, whether it's the internet or computers or even basic electricity connected, right? So when you don't have any of this infrastructure set up, it makes it quite the uphill task to carry out any programs in EdTech.
Interesting. There was one thing I was not hoping, but expecting you'd mention, but you haven't mentioned, which is finance, or everything is cool on that end.
No, it's funds for what? It's funds for it's funds for infrastructure as well, because again, these nonprofits are very resource constrained. So whatever funding they get, and this is something I also learned, you go and visit a partner, and they're not just running a training program for kids, but they're also running a feeding program. They're also running they're giving out school uniforms. So their funding is very limited, and they're already using their funding for so much that it's hard to now say spend X amount on internet bundles monthly. So there's not much, or rather there's not enough investment happening, especially in the rural areas, for to help out these nonprofits or to support these nonprofits carry out their mandate.
Okay, so how do you measure success and effectiveness of your NGO? What metrics do you use?
Yeah, so we're unique in the way we do M&E in our organization. So we don't subject our nonprofits to new metrics and tell them you have to measure this and measure this and measure this. Internally, what we do is we have what we call impact buckets. So these impact buckets are learner engagement, learner growth, teacher productivity, and sustainability and scale. So what happens is we work with the nonprofits and say, what are you currently measuring? How does what you're measuring fit into these 4 impact buckets? So it could be something like they're measuring attendance or promotion rate of students. Those would align to learner engagement. Or they're measuring the knowledge and skills of the teachers, or the collaboration or creativity of teachers in the classroom. That would be under teacher productivity. So it's what are they currently measuring, and how do we align them to Team4Tech's impact buckets?
I like it. I like the scope, and I like it's more. Tell us what metrics you are trying to measure, and then we see how we can plug in to make sure it happens. That sounds actually brilliant. They said They actually say when you're having fun, time really flies. I can't believe time has flown by really fast. Nyagaki, magic wand, what would you like to see in education across the continents? What's are some of the ideal things you'd like to see on the continent if you had a magic wand?
Wow, that's a tough question.
Okay, let me give us some parameters. So let's say in give me mention three key things, ideal things you'd like to see if you had a magic wand to positively affect education across the continent.
All learners, first of all, like all learners,
Mhm.
regardless of where you came from, regardless of who you are, regardless of, like, at the very basic, is that all learners should have access to quality education,
Mm.
right? So that's one thing. The second thing is that teachers are supported, right? So that's through, whether it's financially supported, they are paid well. Teachers are paid well because that's a big problem even in Kenya. So teachers are paid well. They're supported in how they teach in the classroom. They're offered professional development that is, relatable to the current state of how education should be. That's another thing. What would be a third thing? I'd say that everyone plays their part, and that's a big thing that I'm realizing. Like I've just told you, we work with 21 nonprofits in Africa.
Mhm.
There's so many others, and we can't reach out to all of them. We can't, we can't support them. We can't give a grant to every single nonprofit. So how can every other organization, government, whoever it is, play their part, in supporting these nonprofits? So I think that's the thing. If your organization, hell, even you can do CSR, corporate, skilled CSR. So
Yeah.
you have skills. How can you use your skills to help or to support a school in your neighborhood?
Mm.
Yeah, yeah.
So quality education for everyone, everywhere. That's one. Two, teachers to be supported in every sense of the word. And then the last bit you mentioned was that everybody plays their parts.
Yes.
It sounds good when you think about it. I feel like I think it touches on everything.
Yeah.
Because definitely if everybody plays their part, if government plays their parts, it's definitely going to positively affect the way teachers are treated across the board. And that in turn is going to have a positive effect on quality education delivery to positive education access. So there's the access bit and then there's the delivery bits across the board.
Yeah.
I especially
Yes.
like what you said about the fact that any and everybody who, whether person or organization who possess some skill can have a skilled CSR to support. It could be from your streets, a school in your neighborhood,
Yep.
all the way to, if you want to expand it and do, big things, you're allowed to do that. I especially like that because I am actually a firm believer that we all have something to share. We all have something to give that could potentially have a positive impact on another person. Whew, okay, we have about 30 seconds. What advice would you give to especially entrepreneurs who are coming up with the really exciting products and innovations that are popping up, to change the way education has been executed for quite a while? What advice would you give
Yeah.
to them?
It's back to what I said earlier. Who are you designing for? Can we keep the user in mind when we're designing products, when we're designing platforms? Like, let us be very intentional about who we're designing for and what is the intended outcome of whatever we're designing. It's not just about being flashy and something new and cool. It's what is this? What are we trying to achieve?
Mm,
Yeah.
mm,
Yes.
mm. I like it. Nyagaki, thank you so much. I want to have a conversation with you again on a bunch of topics.
Sure.
I thoroughly enjoyed our discussion today. Um, you were open. You gave really incredible insights. You gave incredible solutions to some of the pressing problems that we are having. I'm excited about the exciting stuff Team for Tech is doing across the African continent, especially because I think I view education as a real catalyst to the
Yes.
the progress and developments that we'd like to see. And so thank you for the work that you do, and thank you to your organization for the good work that you're doing.
Thank you so much, Kwame. It's one thing to do the work, but it's another thing for to implore others to do the work. And platforms such as yours allows us to showcase what we're doing and inspire others to take on the mantle.
Oof, you summed it up so beautifully, guys. I'm sure you enjoyed this like I did. Look forward to the next episode. It's going to be as interesting and riveting as this one. Thank you so much and take care. Bye.